everyone, you're welcome to my YouTube channel. So the first thing I'm going to be showing you is how to draft a princess dart bustier. So this princess dart bustier is very basic and it's very simple to understand. So let's get right into it. So I discovered that after making this video and drafting for a very long time, I did not click on the record button. So I'm just going to be highlighting what I did here with the already drafted pattern. Okay, so I'm going to be taking my horizontal measurements, which you have the bust point. My bust point for this measurement is 11, under bust is 14 inches, and then my half length is 16 inches, and then I added 1 inch for seam allowance. The reason why I added 1 inch was because I'm going to be using half on the shoulder, half to join the shoulder, and another half to join the lower part of this dress. So I'm going to be taking my shoulder measurement. Shoulder measurement is 7 inches. I'm going to add half for sleeve allowance, which is 7.5 inches. And then I'll take my shoulder slope, which is 1 inch. And then to get my chest line, what I do is my shoulder plus 1 inch. Please take note that this is applicable for um a princess dart pattern. So I'm going to show you why it is important that you add 1 inch to have your shoulder measurement on the chest line later on in the video. So I'm going to go ahead and take my shoulder midpoint. Now to get the shoulder midpoint, I divide the shoulder length or the chest line by 2. So if you look properly, you're going to see that I have a dart in the midpoint of my armhole. I'm going to cut out that dart, and that is why I need to replace that 1 inch on the chest line. So shoulder measurement starting from the shoulder slope, please. This must start from the shoulder slope. Your half of your shoulder measurement plus 1 inch. Mine gave me 8, and so that's what I used for my chest line. So this is very important so that you do not have reductions in your measurements. So now I'm going to be taking my nipple to nipple measurements, which is 4 inches. So I'll be taking the 4 inches from my bust point to my under bust length, and that is my half length lines. So that's where I'm going to be imputing my 4 inches. And then so I'm going to connect a straight line down from there. So I do not like to have my dart start directly on the bust point because it gives it this pointy effect on the nipple area. So what I do is that I go up by 1/2 inch, and then I go down by 1/2 inch from the bust point. I go up by 1/2 inch and then come down by 1/2 inch so that it gives me a flat surface around the nipple area. So now what I'm going to do is my dart intake. On the under bust length, I'm going to take in 1 inch on either side of the dart. But if I'm working for somebody that is very busty, I like to take 1.5 inch on the right side of the dart instead of 1 inch so that it can accommodate the bust. But for all my size 6, 8, and 10, I like to use 1 inch on both sides. So I'm going to connect a curve. I'm going to connect a curve from the 1/2 inch below the bust point to the 1 inch dart that I took. So I connected a curve like that with my pattern master. Then I also flipped and connected another curve on the other side of the dart to the 1/2 inch below the bust point. So I connected the 1 inch dart length down to the half length. And so I'm going to, remember I said I kept 1/2 inch from the top. So that 1/2 inch is going to go to the midpoint. Sorry, at this point I forgot to tell you about the midpoint of the armhole area. So I made a deepening. On the chest line, I divided it by 2 inches. What I had on the chest line was 8 inches. So I divided by 2, and then what I had was 4 inches, which is what I used for my midpoint, armhole midpoint. And then I went in by 3/4 of an inch to create an armhole deepening so that you don't have a puffy armhole. And then I connected it down. So I connected it to my bust measurement like so. I connected the 3 points together. And so the next thing I did was to connect that dart. Remember I said that I used 1 inch on that side of the right side of my dart, and so that 1 inch that I got there from the midpoint of the armhole, I'm going to go up by 1/2 inch, and then I'm going to come down by 1/2 inch, if you understand. And then I'm going to connect the two dart legs to the bust point. So I'm going to use my pattern curve to make that curve. Remember, I went up by 1/2 inch from the bust point so that I do not have a pointy nipple area. Then I connected the first dart leg. Now the second dart leg is going to be extended. So I'm going to connect that curve and then extend it. What I need to extend it by is 1 inch. So since I'm working with 1 inch darts, I also needed to extend by 1 inch. So that's what I did there. So from that midpoint, I'm going to extend my dart by 1 inch. That's my 1 inch mark that I made there. And so I'm going to come down to the chest line and make a 1 inch seam allowance. Now the purpose of this 1 inch seam allowance is so that when I cut out that dart, and I cut out this area of the dart, I'm going to sew it back. So there's going to be a shortening in that area so that I do not end up with little measurements to use to sew my seam allowance. So I have to replace that area which I'm going to cut out. So I'll connect from the 1 inch I extended by to the 1 inch seam allowance that I kept. So next I'm going to use input my seam allowance. I used 2.5 inches for this seam allowance so that I like to get an excess of seam allowance on my pattern. So on the under bust line, I'm going to put 1/4 of my under bust width, which is 7.2. Then I'm going to replace the 2 inches that I had used in the under bust length. I'm going to add the 2 inches replacement there, and then I'm going to use my seam allowance of 2.5 inches, and I'm going to mark that out there. Then the next thing I'm going to do is to put my waist measurement on the half length line. 1/4 of the waist measurement is 7 inches. So that's what I'm going to input there. I'll use 7 inches for the waist measurement. And then I'm still going to replace the 2 inches that. Please never forget to replace your dart, else you're going to be in so much trouble. And then 2.5 inches for the seam allowance. So I'm going to connect those points together. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is a bust dart. I like to put my bust dart on paper so that I do not have to sew it on the fabric. So I'm just going to put a bust dart. To get my bust dart, I'm going to go out by 1.5 from the nipple to nipple line on the bust point. And then I'm going to go up by 1 inch and go down by 1 inch. And note that there are people whose bust point is usually very close to their chest line. If this happens, on the bust point, just go down completely by 2 inches. But because I have a lot of space between the bust point and the chest line, what I did was just to go up by 1 inch on the bust point and then go down by 1 inch. That is a total of 2 inches, and then I'm going to connect it to that point. So I'm marking out my 1 inch above the bust point, 1 inch below the bust point, and then I'm going to connect those two lines together like so. So I'm going to go ahead and fold this dart and pin it together, and I'll show you what it looks like after I do so. So this is what I got after cutting and sewing that bustier on my fabric. You can see how firm the bust area looks like. And for this particular bodice, I used a wadding to pad the bust area, and so it gave me this firm look. So this is basically a princess cut bustier. If you want me to make a more detailed video on how I cut each of my interfacing for this, please let me know in the comment section and I will respond with another video. Thank you. Bye.